Hello and welcome to another edition of Open Door. My guest is Nicole D. Miller. She is an author. She has a book out. It's called When Love Wins. And I really love the title because it tells me that this book has to have a happy ending. Otherwise, it would have been called When Love Loses. Welcome to Open Door, Nicole.
Thank you, Vince. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, it's my pleasure to have this conversation with you. You're not a stranger to Open Door. You've been on the radio program a few times, but you have to keep coming back because you keep writing these books. And I know that you're not just writing books for yourself. You're helping others get their publishing careers off the ground. So we'll talk about that. But let's start with this book, When Love Wins. What was the genesis of this publication?
Yeah, it's interesting because my first bout with creative writing was my last book, Stories for the Urban Soul. And a couple of those short stories were intertwined, and they're at a venue called Devon's Cafe in New York. So When Love Wins starts back at Devon's Cafe in New York, and some of the characters in my short stories pop up in When Love Wins. But it really was this theme of dealing with childhood trauma, some things that are kind of hard that we experience in our younger days, and how that can affect us in our adult years. So the main character, Ashley, she's materialistic, shallow, just a hot mess, and she really lashes out at her cousin, Natalie. And I know that I've been in a period of grief recovery when my mom passed, so I was able to write about that through Natalie's character. Her mom passes, she's looking for healing and help, but she's dealing with this drama from Ashley. But spiritually, she feels led to love her anyway. So quite a few different sources. I've had some childhood trauma I've had to work through. I got to go through that experience with Ashley. I've had healing from a loss of a loved one, loss of a parent. I got to work that out through Natalie. So definitely multiple influences.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. You experienced trauma and then you had to go through a process to recover from it. Talk about what your process was.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of always in process, right? But I would say some of the larger influences of my healing were my community, my pastors in fellowship. They've been like parents and family for me. Definitely changing my eating and being healthier. Those were great avenues for me to get healthier physically. Tapping into mental health resources. With Natalie, she struggles with cutting and depression and anxiety, and so we don't talk a lot about that in the Black community. I've had some personal help with therapists, like when my mom passed, I saw a counselor, different other types of counseling through friendships and having a strong sisterhood and community. So I would say physical therapies, working out, changing your eating, your diet, mental health therapy, spiritual community and therapy. So a vast majority of options for me to walk in healing and wholeness on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the character that had an issue with cutting. How did you become aware of that, and how are you able to help people work through that issue in their lives?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I never personally went through that. My struggle was more with eating disorders and body image, and I know the youth these days get hit even harder with social media. We didn't have that back when I was young. So with Natalie, I did a little bit of research. One of my friends is a counselor. I did some interviews with her, other people that have cutting issues. So I definitely, did some research, but I know that it's a similar mental health struggle such as the eating disorders that I went through, Natalie's character, she struggles with perfectionism. She doesn't have her father in her life. That was something I could relate to. She's kind of like the type A, let me just be in control of my life so that no one else leaves it. I've resonated with that as well. And so kind of those were some of her reasons for diving into cutting as well. So yeah, I did some research, but also kind of put my little spin on it with things that I know I've personally dealt with.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the other issues aside from that your characters are dealing with?
Yeah, so with Ashley, she lost her mom at a younger age. So what I kind of play around with is how does the loss of a parent affect us in our youth and affect us when we're older? So she was a younger age, so she also went through some childhood bullying and trauma that affected her because it all happened around the same time. So when you first meet this girl, you're really turned off by her. She's like shallow, materialistic, a little narcissistic and snobby. But it's like, how do we grow up if we don't deal with our pain, right? So even though she experienced bullying in her youth, she ends up bullying others because she never deals with it, right? But her father raised her. So he's there, but then he's just kind of throwing money at her. So he's not really spending time with her, yet he's spending time with Natalie. So another theme would be parent absenteeism. So with Natalie, we have her losing her mom. We have some mental health struggles. She's relocated. She's in a whole different city. She's struggling with her friends not being there for her. She has her spirituality and faith, but she's still struggling with feeling alone. And then we have some more positive themes of faith, love, and sisterhood. So it's kind of all intermingled within these characters.
It seems as though your writing has an activism of sorts, in that you are recognizing that people go through things in life and perhaps they need some insight into how they can recover from those things. I'm curious about who's reading Nicole D. Miller's books.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I feel like my largest target audience is Black female, 30-something, 20-something, but I've had white people read my books, I've had men read my books, I've had older people read my books, so I don't think it's limiting, but I think the vast majority is probably the 20, 30-something Black female.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because I'm a Black female. No, because I write about things that are relative to our culture. So my goal is to infuse spirituality in Black culture, you know, and we are spiritual people as African Americans, whatever your beliefs are. We're tribal people, we're indigenous people, we're dialed in intuitively, I believe, to the earth, to the creator. So of course I'm going to attract people that are on that vibration, you know.
So in terms of being indigenous, when I hear indigenous, I think about indigenous to America.
Yeah.
I also think about indigenous to Africa.
Right.
And this might be kind of going off on a tangent, but right now there's really a controversy about whether we're indigenous to here or whether we're indigenous to Africa. When you look at history, we were actually here first before anyone else. I'm just wondering, in light of what you just shared, how do you view your relationship to Africa?
That's a good question. I feel like I do feel more lost, right, when I think of myself as an African, like, because I'm not culturally African. I feel like Africans have their own culture. They were able to sustain their customs, their identity, their names. I think of Black Panther. I feel like that was such a good illustration of the Black American male versus the Black man who got to stay home and know who he was, right? And so that's a whole nother dialogue. But I think for me, there's still a disconnect with African as my culture. What I do feel dialed into is my ancestry. So I was raised by my mom and grandma, my great-grandma, and I feel like I have enough understanding of the struggles that they went through in this country to get me to where I am today. And I pay them full homage, you know? So I know if I went further back, I would be like, of course, African ancestry, but I feel like I'm more in tune with the last 4 or 5 generations that have gone through what they've gone through in this country for me to be sitting on this stage here today.
Okay. So I'm going to share something with you. I've been to Africa a few times. It's no secret about that. When I go to Africa, I see people who look just like you.
Yeah.
Exactly like you. As a matter of fact, if I were to compare you to someone in Africa, I would say that you might have roots in the country that's known as Nigeria. As a matter of fact, I know Nigerians that you could stand right next to and be sisters to. Mm-hmm. The thing about the difference in what's happening over there and what's happening over here is that we've both been affected by a system of racism. Here in America, we knew it as Jim Crow.
Yeah.
In Africa, they dealt with colonialism, which was the European influence on the continent. They went in and they carved up the country and they said, okay, Germany, you get this, Great Britain, you get that, France, you get this, and so forth and so on. But what I've come to understand is that in essence, we're all one people.
Right.
But the disconnect comes because of the separation that occurred. So when we talk about this idea of being indigenous, there are some folks who actually think that the enslavement process never happened. That they think that, well, we were already here, that the slave trade didn't happen.
Wow.
But having been there, having stood in a slave dungeon and connected with my ancestors in that space, and having been moved to tears because of that, I know that there is a connection between us that I don't discount. If everybody's experience is different, but I just try to be intentional about letting folks know that there is a connection. And then the other beautiful thing is that there are Africans, brothers and sisters who are indigenous to the continent, that understand what happened, and their message to us is come home, because they have a real desire to connect with us and to create a unification that results in us being that family that we used to be, the family that we need to be in order for us to be successful. And the truth of the matter is, they need us, just like we need them, so that we can connect with the culture, because the culture actually lives in us. There are things that we do as Africans in the diaspora that are directly related to what Africans do, different practices, different things that are common to all of us that we don't know. I also know that when Africans come to America, they're told to distance themselves from us. They're given information that we're criminals, that that we are to be feared and to be isolated from. So typically, when some Africans come to America, they isolate themselves in the same way that when we go to Africa as expatriates, we isolate ourselves and we don't connect with them. So when I sit here and I look at you, I see a beautiful African woman who just happens to be here in America. I know that was a tangent, but
I get it.
I just had to get that out.
I get it. I haven't been to Africa, but I've been to Haiti. So I've been to Haiti a few times. And it's funny because they always think I'm Haitian. And I know a little French. They speak Creole and French, so I can kind of get by and pick up on the Creole. So I totally understand that. And then even I've been to Hawaii, and I had that same revelation of them being these tribal people, and when they would do their sounds and their calls, it resonated with me, like these are my people, we're connected somehow, I had a connection with the trees there and the earth. I was like, what is going on in Hawaii, so I definitely resonate with all of that we are tribal people, and even if we don't have the head knowledge, our spirit knows. Yeah,
that's key. It really is about spirit. And once upon a time, I was connected with Dr. Runoko Rashidi, who, among other things, is a cultural anthropologist. And his mission in life was to travel the world and make known the African presence in all those different places. So, for instance, you could go to Japan and experience the Ainu people. I was fortunate enough to do that, and you can see that these people have African in them. You can go to parts of Central America and see things that have been left behind that show you the Africanness of these people. So we literally are all around the world. Dr. Rashidi was actually exorcised, I'll use that term, from India. He went to India and he connected with the black people in India, and some are known as Dravidians, but they have a caste system in India, and for whatever reason, the people who have the most melanin in their skin are the ones who are discriminated against to the greatest extent. They call them the untouchables. So Africans all over the world, and there's a growing awareness about our connections. So I'm just looking forward to a time when we can embrace our African ancestry as you have, but to take it to the next level, understand that we are Africans, and we don't have to have any dispersions about it, any insecurities about it. You know, all of our lives we've been told, you know, we're ugly, or you know,
Right.
something that you may have heard that you're beautiful for a black girl.
Yes, burns
know.
me up. I still hate that.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, and it's funny we're bringing this up, and we'll get into this later. I'm doing a online event called Girl Talk this month that I've been doing for the last year and a half quarterly, and the topic is going to be called Pretty Girls versus America. And I want us to talk about the standards of beauty that our culture has kind of pressed upon us, and how that shaped our view and the messages we received in our home and all of that. So colorism definitely plays a part in my journey, but that's just because of what the culture says. The closer you are to the one that's the oppressor, and the more you look like their features or have their features, then the more accepted you are, even psychologically or subconsciously. We're not even aware. I've even been told that pets are discriminated against. I have a black cat. We all know the stigma with black cats. He is the friendliest cat I've ever met, so it's a false stigma. A friend of mine told me black dogs get picked up last in shelters, so it goes even down to the pets. It's crazy.
Right.
So yeah, it's just about what the culture is saying is beautiful, and the furthest away from that you are, it shapes your mindset of what's acceptable and what's attractive. Now, if they find someone that they feel like is attractive that defies what the rules are, then you're the exception to the rule. So
yeah. You know, tragically, too, we have this intraracial discrimination. Okay, so just for an example, I had a conversation with someone today who told me that his father was Caucasian. And he said that there were a number of children in his family, but for some reason, he was the light-skinned one. So he may have had 6 or 7 sisters and brothers, but for whatever reason, they stuck him with things like he had to do more work than everyone else. They really made him feel bad. He didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, he just came into the world and he looks the way he looks, but he is suffering today. He's dealing with trauma today because of things that happened to him in his childhood. And the other tragic thing about it is that those things have surfaced in the form of lupus.
Oh, wow.
And he's also dealing with sickle cell anemia. So, you know, I'm listening to his life story, and, you know, of course, you know, I want to do whatever I can to get some help for him. But there really is that thing that happens within our race where we discriminate against each other. But, you know, the other thing is that as a race of people, we have 26, 27 different shades.
I believe it.
You know, and it doesn't take 2 light people to produce a light person. You know, there's just so many different combinations. And when you look at how many other folks were together before it came to you, if you go back 400 or 500 years, it's like 4,000 different possibilities in terms of, you know, all these folks who existed before you did. So I know it's a little off topic, but.
Well, even you saying that, it makes me think of my intentionality with my writing. I want to let people know, even subtly, that we're not just light and dark skin. I have medium brown skin tones, I have coffee brown, I have Godiva, I have ebony. So I play around with different adjectives to just show that we are different hues, and my characters are a variety of different hues, and they're all beautiful.
You know, something that you just said kind of alerted me to something, and that is the power of words. Being a writer myself, I know sometimes you have to be creative in terms of saying the same thing with a different word.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your relationship with language. Obviously, you're very eloquent, and writing is something that gives you a reward. So what was it that brought you into this consciousness that, hey, I can tell these stories and I can help heal people?
You know, it's interesting. I never saw myself as a writer. I thought one day I'll write books when I'm old, which I thought was 40, but it's not old anymore because now I'm 40. But I started blogging. So I started blogging in 2012, and it really came out of being bored at work, and I forgot I loved reading, and I was reading blogs, and then I started writing, and I did not know being an avid reader makes you a good writer. So growing up, I always lost myself in books. I was a loner, I was bullied, I was an only child, and books became my friends. And so as an adult, when I picked up blogging, it stirred up this writing thing in me. And my first book, How to Overcome Heartbreak, Recovering from Misguided Said Love was birthed out of a blog post I wrote with the same title. And that's really where my writing career got started. But I still didn't see myself as a writer. It was just being obedient to the spirit to do what I feel like I'm called to do. And then I ended up writing a second book. Still didn't think I was a writer. But then I took a workshop at Lit Cleveland, and it was about short story writing. And a friend of mine, she was a roommate, she wrote a short story, and it was the first time I thought, I could write short stories? Okay. And I went to that workshop and inspired my first short story, Lisa, which is in urban stories. And that got the ball rolling for me with creative writing. But there was this myth in my mind, well, you can't make money writing. Like, you need to be about your business, you know? So I still didn't pursue it full time until the pandemic hit. I had some more flexibility. I finished my book, and that's when I got serious. And that's when I was all in, and people have seen the change in me where it was like, okay, laser focus. This is my calling and purpose. And in the midst of that, I wrote When Love Wins and then published Someone, and it grew and grew and grew. And I finally began to see, oh, I'm a real writer. But I take workshops. I'm what they call self-taught because my degrees weren't in writing or journalism. Now I'm a journalist for the Cleveland Observer. So it's just kind of real life experiences and practice. I think writing is that industry where you are always growing in and you're developing, and a lot of your development is coming from practicing and reading. You know, so now I'm reading Toni Morrison, so I'm introduced to these authors that I kind of missed out on growing up because our schools didn't teach these things. And so I'm still developing, and now I'm coaching and helping other people develop. But it suits my personality. I always love a challenge. So any industry where you're always going to grow in is like an industry for me.
Yeah, that's quite a paradigm shift, you know, going from, okay, well, I'll try my hand at writing short stories, and the next thing you know, you're writing novels, and not just writing novels, but helping others write their novels too. So that's a perfect segue into talking about your evolution and the platform that you have right now. So talk to us about the Nicole D. Miller publishing empire.
So the publishing piece was inspired by a friend of mine whose mom actually gave me a word years prior, and she said, you're going to have a publishing company. And I was like, not even, you know, like I wasn't thinking about creative writing at that point, but I put it on the shelf. You get those divine words, you're like, we'll see. 4 years later, her daughter comes to me, hey, can you publish me? And I keep trying to push off my ebook. I have an ebook out called Self-Publishing 101, Everything You Need to Know from One Author to Another. I give you my tips, things that I learned. I'm like, girl, just read the book. She's like, no, I want you to publish me. So I ended up publishing her and realized, like, oh, I can do this. Like, this is what I should be doing. And then I got another client and another. And then now we have the website. We offer one-on-one coaching, 45 minutes of you telling us where you're at, how we can get you to the next stages in your writing career. We do different types of editing. There's line editing, copy editing, developmental editing, which is a must if you have a fiction book. And then we do hybrid publishing, where we give you the services needed to get your book out there and making sure that we have high integrity. We're not stealing from you. You're keeping your rights. I'm all about equipping and giving you resources so that you can be an indie author. And now I'm teaching workshops. So I did a workshop last weekend at the Cleveland Public Library. I was able to share on self-publishing and hybrid publishing and that sort of thing, and I have another opportunity emerging. So all of this is just kind of branched out from saying yes to blogging, and it's just been one step in front of the other. And now I get to help other people do what I've been doing for a decade now.
Yeah, I dropped in on your workshop that you did at the library, and I saw you dispensing the wisdom. I couldn't stay very long because, you know, very busy, but I was scrolling and I said, oh, Nicole, she's live. She's at the library. And I was hoping, because I did send your information to folks to let them know that you were there so that they could get the benefit of what you were doing. So your career as a tax person, a tax accountant, that's in the rearview mirror now?
It is. Sadly, my clients try to hold on to me this tax season, but, you know, I have to be obedient to what's in my heart. I could pick that up at any time, but right now I'm really in this creative space. And I feel like I've been walking in purpose for a while, even with my degrees in business. And of course, that helps me with the publishing house. It helps me with marketing and branding myself as an indie author. But the creative space, there's just nothing like it. I feel fulfilled. And I feel like this is the first time in my journey that I have felt that. And I know it's because I'm demonstrating what it's like to be a creative in the image of the creator. Like, I'm manifesting these ideas, these dreams, these visions, and it's happening. So
Okay, before we conclude the program, I want folks to know how they can reach out to you and connect with you so they can jump aboard the ND Miller trade.
Yep. So if you are an aspiring author and you need writing and coaching help, developmental help, you can go to ndmiller.pub. If you'd like to look more into me, you can go to NicoleDMiller.com. And if you'd like to learn more about my debut novel, you can go to whenlovewins.love.
One other thing, you were talking about walking in purpose, and,
Yes.
and I saw a few months back you had an injury, and you were very public about it. It was no secret, but obviously you've bounced back from that.
Yeah, and I think you're referring to my ankle injury.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a thing at the end of 2021, but it took me like 8 months to recover because I was not slowing down. That was the issue. I just made the whole thing worse. It probably started out as a sprain, and it ended up being a fracture, and I broke all the ligaments and the tendons, and I was on a knee roll later, and it was a mess. But it's because I was still like working out and going to my events and took a road trip, and I just wasn't listening.
Okay. So obviously you're healed up
Yep,
now.
I'm stepping again. I'm doing my thing, so I'm active.
Okay, and then you've adopted this new dietary regimen.
Yeah, there's some information that I'm going to be putting out with the Cleveland Observer just on women's health. But yeah, I'm changing my diet, doing the whole vegan thing, and I've actually written a little bit about that on my blog. It's called How Apple Cider Vinegar Saved My Life. So you can check that out at NicoleDMiller.com.
ACV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you use it?
So I've been drinking it diluted twice a day, 2 teaspoons a day. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a lot of health benefits with that too.
You drink it in water or something
Yeah,
else?
hot water. I tried it with cold, but it was just, it was disgusting. So hot water, I kind of drink it like a tea. A friend of mine told me I could put a cinnamon stick in there and like a natural sweetener. I tried it that way, but because I've groomed my taste buds to the regular, like now I'm just used to drinking it with a teaspoon of straight apple cider,
Okay.
apple vinegar.
Okay. Well, congratulations to you on the paradigm
Yeah,
shift.
thank you.
We talked before the show started, and I shared with you being vegan since 2014. Actually,
know.
I'll say plant-based. I've been a vegetarian over the space of 41, 42 years.
Whew.
So as long
Yeah.
as you've been on the planet,
Exactly.
I've been a vegetarian of some sort, pescatarian for, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so. But I think it will suit you well.
Thank you.
And hopefully it will add to your longevity and stimulate your brain thinking, and you'll be able to write more books that we can look forward to reading.
So when I have more books out, I'm going to credit you. I'm like, Vince told me that changing my diet would help me write more books.
All right, I'll be glad to see my name in print in your book.
Trust me, you're already famous. I'm trying to get to your level, okay? Trying to get there.
Well, Nicole, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that folks will go to your website and procure their copy of your book and read a happy ending. How about that?
Yay,
We need some
happy
good
endings.
news in
Black
these bad
joy.
times. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Vince.
All right, and as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your best day. Peace.